you kind of mentioned earlier, what Larry says that, as your swing speed kind of slows down, we need to start getting that ball up in the air. And that kind of is a perfect segue into my next question here is you're seeing more 7 and 9 woods in play with, the everyday golfer, average golfer, but you're also seeing more of them on the PGA Tour. You go look back at the PGA Championship. I mean, you saw, Scheffler play with a 7 wood. Morikawa had a 7 or even a 9 wood. There's a lot of higher lofted fairway woods. Obviously, getting that ball in the air and some more stopping power has been a big reason behind that. Is that still something you're seeing continually in the fitting bay? Is that, getting people into these higher lofted fairwoods continues to benefit them?
Yeah, I would say that that's not necessarily a new trend. It's been around. But what is new is that stronger swings are now playing more 7 woods and 9 woods. So as an example, if you think back to the very beginning of kind of where we had 7 woods, and we had them with wooden woods. We've had 6 woods, we've had 7 woods, 8 woods, 9 woods. You can go way, way, way back. And what they're doing is they're just trying to create something that can get a little bit more loft to it, right? That's the same thing that's happening today, except we're seeing more strong swings utilizing that. If I go into the senior section or the ladies section of the golf clubs right now, there's always been 7 woods and 9 woods and 11 woods. They've always been there. But now I can go into the stiff, the extra stiff, or the regular and find a lot more. Yeah. And that's another part of the puzzle in terms of a fitting. You also look at when we talk about like hybrids. Well, there are hybrids today that have now started to morph into being bigger than what a 7 wood used to be. So you can get something that looks almost the same, performs almost the same. They call it a hybrid instead of a fairway wood. No. Then and it's all over the place. You could get, some of the companies make gigantic size-wise. You get, a 9 wood that actually looks like, bigger than my 3 wood. Go figure. So I think it's a trend, but it's also something that we're starting to see because of the 4 things I mentioned with the golf ball. Ball speed, launch, spin, and direction. So I want launch because that's going to stay in the air. I want launch and spin because that's going to give me drop stop power, which is huge. And I can't necessarily do that with an iron, maybe a little bit more with a hybrid. But if I can go upwards and I get it to go a little bit straighter, it becomes a more useful tool. We still see a lot of strong swingers with a long iron. They'll have 3 irons or 2 irons or driving irons. They'll have long irons. That kind of game for someone that's not swinging very fast it's not going to produce ball speed. It won't produce launch. It won't produce spin. So that's one of the reasons why I think 7 and 9 woods are not only continuing to be very popular, but a very useful tool. It's also if someone has like a hybrid, they come in and say, like, I've never hit a hybrid. I can't stand hybrids. Great. Not a problem. It's like, that's just another segment of golf clubs that we don't even have to try.
Yep.
But every company is making multiple styles too. Yep. It's not just like, oh yeah, here's our 7 wood for the year. No, there's like 3 different models of 7 wood. So
yeah, your low spin, your draw bias, then your core model.
Yeah,
it's very, very, very in line with what you've seen with drivers for many, many years now. So kind of last one here that I've got. If you have any other things you've noticed, feel free to chime in. But Ping came out with the G440 Max 4 wood, right?
Yep.
And a lot of people see that, and it's and then they say, well, isn't that just a 3HL? Speaking of HL, and talking about what's on the actual club. But,
yeah.
Is there any difference between a 4 wood and a 3HL? And then what kind of? I know you'd mentioned earlier too something about the Callaway, the Heavenwood. So like, what's kind of that area of the bag? What are you seeing?
Well, again, it kind of goes back to where someone might come in as a customer and say, I'm looking for a driver and then like a 3 wood and maybe a hybrid. Well, why is it a 3 wood? Like if functionally we don't perform well with a 3 wood because it doesn't have enough loft and it's not launching, it's not spinning, then we need to look at more loft. So the 3 high launch is, in my book, it's the same thing as a 4 wood. If as an example, if I'm in TrackMan and I've got the 3 high launch, I just put it as a tag. I put it under 4 wood because I understand one company calls it a high launch 3 wood, like TaylorMade does that, and so does Callaway. Titleist doesn't necessarily name it something. It just says on there 16.5.
Yep.
But on any of those models, you can adjust that loft up or down. You can rotate the lie angle, open or closed. So when you start to go like a ping where it has 4 wood and it says 17, there's other companies that are making 4 woods out there.
Yeah.
And there again, too, the 4 wood could be 19 degrees. It could be 18 degrees. It could be 17 degrees. So what do you start? What is a 5 wood anymore? What is a 3 wood anymore? What's a 2 wood? We talk about the mini drivers.
Yep.
Well, aren't they really just a 2 wood? They're not necessarily a driver. They're just a lofted, kind of a bigger lofted fairway wood.
Yep.
The other part of that, too, is like what Callaway did a long, long time ago is with the heaven wood. So they have something that's longer. So it's usually the length of like a 3 wood. It's bigger than a 7 wood. It's got the size of like a 5 wood. And then it's got the loft of a 7 wood. So at 20 degrees, you basically have what is a 3 wood at 20 degrees. So where do we put that? Right? It's great because what it does is it just provides us options. It provides us an opportunity to get out there and see what's going on. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, we just try something else.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the big thing with whether it's 4 wood, 3HL. I think the nomenclature of it is kind of irrelevant.
Yep.
It's more like you kind of mentioned in an earlier talk with wedges, like a specific distance, 15 yards. It's whatever's filling that perfect gap for you, and that's why gapping your bag is so important between
Right.
driver and your irons because 3 wood, 5 wood used to be the standard, but that might not be the case anymore. Maybe it's 3HL and then you're going 7 wood, and that's filling
Yep.
that. So.
Well, and that brings up a really good point, though. I don't believe in the let's get every club in the category. Like I generally say someone comes in and has a 3 hybrid, 4 hybrid, 5 hybrid, right? We don't need 3. What we need is probably 1. Because if you think about a 3, 4, 5 hybrid, the 4 is probably going to go about like the 3 and certainly a little bit more than the 5. But at sometimes the 4 is going to go only about as far as the 5. And the same thing with the 3. The 3 is going to go sometimes like the 4, and once in a while, it's going to be out there on its own like the 3. When the reality is I could just basically carry the 4, and I can still cover almost the same amount of spacing with it.
Yeah.
And the same thing goes for drive. I need a driver, a 3 wood, a 5 wood. No, we might just need the 4 wood, and then 1 hybrid. Now, all of a sudden, we save some clubs. That gives us an opportunity to add another wedge. So even from a fitting perspective, we're always trying to find what gaps out or spaces out, and that's where all these clubs kind of fit in.
Yeah, that's kind of, with my bag, I've, used to have clubs that were 20 years old. I've gotten fit for a couple things lately, and I go now driver, 3HL, 4 wood at 3HL, whatever you want to call it, 16.5 degrees, and then I go straight into a 4 iron.
Yeah.
So it's just 1 wood, and it's basically, I'm only going to hit this club once or twice around, so I don't, and then for me, I go 53, 56, 59 with my wedges. So I have 3 degrees of gaps, and for whatever reason, that's just what hit certain distances. And then I think the big thing was I loved my 56 from Vokey, so I bent a little bit just because I love chipping with it. So and then my my lob and my other sand wedge I kind of just bent, so that way I kind of had a little more consistent gaps. But yeah. So anyways, well, Tyler, this was great. Appreciate you taking the time and sitting down with us. Golfers, make sure you're scheduling a fitting with guys like Tyler, rest of our master fitting staff. They will help get you dialed in no matter what part of the game you're going for. So Tyler, thanks as always for coming and hopping on the Second Swing Thoughts podcast.
It's great to be here. Keep your grooves clean and stay razor sharp.